Hello again. So, as I mentioned before, most of my books are not here on the shelf. Most of them are either on my laptop or on my Kindle. And today I want to talk about the one I finished reading most recently. This one I finished on, let's see, on Monday. And I'm not sure when this will be posted, but hopefully either today, which is Tuesday, or maybe a little bit later because I want to do a little bit of editing. Put the maybe put the cover of the book up here in post production. That kind of thing. But anyway, the book that I read on Monday was, or finished on Monday, was called "The Wisdom of Ancient Sumer" by Bendt Alster. And you may know that Sumer is the name of an ancient Near Eastern civilization in Mesopotamia, which today is Iraq. Um, Sumer is actually the first known Mesopotamian civilization, or at least the first literate Mesopotamian civilization. And that's not an accident. That's the reason that I sought out this book. Unfortunately, I only have a digital copy, but what can you do? Um, so I sought out this book because I wanted to read the very first literature that we still have access to. And I want to stress that we still have access to, because one of the things that really strikes you as you're reading this book is how much do we really know about this ancient civilization? You know, how much have we lost from like 4 to 5 thousand years ago, maybe even longer? Um, and the thing that really struck me more than anything else is the opening lines of the Instructions of Shurupak, which is the oldest known literary text. There are older texts, there are older surviving writings, but there are things like receipts or bills of sale, things like that, not literary text. This one is the oldest known literary text. And I want you to listen to the translation of uh, the first few lines of the Instructions of Shurupak, because it is astounding. Keep in mind, again, this is the oldest literary text that we still have access to. There's, as far as we know, there's nothing else. And this is the opening lines. In those days, in those far remote days, in those nights, in those far away nights, in those years, in those far remote years, in those days, the intelligent one, the one of elaborate words, the wise one who lived in the country, the man from Shurupak, the intelligent one, the one of elaborate words, the wise one who lived in the country, the man from Shurupak gave instructions to his son. Now, just for one, that's beautiful, I think. You can see a few places where the translation is a little bit janky and awkward sounding. The one of elaborate words sounds a little strange to modern ears, but I'm sure it sounded much better in the original Sumerian. How would I know? I'm just guessing. But the fact that the oldest literary text we have access to evokes those faraway days, those far remote years, uh, it's so evocative. It just makes you wonder, how much have we lost? Um, what do we, what is missing from our understanding of our own past? And that's the reason I wanted to read this book. Now, I have to say, as a as a book, this is probably not for everyone. The original texts included are highly fragmentary. There's a lot of there's a lot of things that are not really it's not really possible to make a legible translation of everything, because the texts are thousands of years old. They're marked in cuneiform on clay tablets that only survived because the cities that they were in burned down and turned those clay tablets into ceramic. So, naturally, not everything is going to make it to the present day in any kind of readable, legible form. But what we do have is precious. Uh, and so, it's hard to get the full experience from these texts. The other reason why I think this is not necessarily for everyone is the bulk of the book is textual commentary, translators notes, um, things like that. Things that probably are only of interest to dedicated Mesopotamians or dedicated scholars of Mesopotamia. In particular, people who actually do speak the language or can read the language at any rate, because a lot of it does seem to be geared towards uh, colleagues of the author, who are also working on understanding these ancient texts. But the texts that are in the book are incredible. What little we have, the small amounts that are preserved, it's well worth your time to check out. Uh, I want to talk a little bit about the title of the book, Wisdom of Ancient Sumer, because I think a lot of people are not really familiar with the idea of wisdom as a literary genre. And I think that's a really important point to keep in mind. Um, Wisdom as a genre, it, it barely exists nowadays, but essentially it takes the form of collections of wise words, wise sayings, proverbs, things like that. If you want to think of a relatively well-known example, um, in the Bible, the Book of Proverbs and the Book of Ecclesiastes are both wisdom texts. So that's kind of the literary format. And if you're familiar at all with biblical texts like the Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, a lot of this will have echoes with something that you know, because the wisdom of the ancient Middle East or the ancient Near East, depending on your source, uh, has it mixes and matches. You can detect elements from the instructions of Shurupak and the other books in here, in not just the Bible, but in ancient Egyptian texts, in some ancient Greek texts, particularly Hesiod has a lot of wisdom in his writings. Even in the Quran, which of course was much, much later. Uh, and even on into Rome, and in some cases even into the Middle Ages in Europe. You can hear these echoes of this ancient past, and that's really fascinating to me because before the late 1800s, we had no idea what any of this stuff said. Uh, the cuneiform was not deciphered until very, very recently, in, well, relative terms, late 1800s, like I said. Um, so for most of Western history, for most of Islamic history, for most of the history of Europe, the Middle East, and all of that, uh, we had lost our connection to the foundational texts of our civilizations. And I really mean that Mesopotamia in a lot of ways is the beginning of both Western and Islamic civilization. Um, it's You can see the origins of writing, the origins of city life, the origins of agriculture here, and in with the exception of Egypt, which there's debate. There's a lot of scholarly debate over whether the Egyptian civilization was fully independent from the Mesopotamian civilization, or whether there was you know, some kind of influence in the very beginning of it. But with the possible exception of Egypt, everything in the Middle East, everything in Europe, ultimately comes from Mesopotamia. And you know, I'm not saying that it's exclusively from Mesopotamia. Of course, there's a huge variety if we're looking at Europe and the Middle East, but the the wellspring of culture, the wellspring of language, the wellspring of literature and agriculture, and all of these things that we think of as essentially modern. Um, derived from what's now Iraq. And that is uh, that's the thing that really hurts me the most when I watch the news. And admittedly, recently, I think the situation in Iraq has been improving. But when you watch the news and when you see ISIL destroying these, great ancient ruins, they're not just destroying, or where they weren't just destroying the heritage of Iraq. They were destroying the heritage of the whole world, and that's, it hurts your heart when you think about this. Uh, anyone who anyone who has a bookcase like this that is written in the Latin script, the Greek script, the Cyrillic script, the Arabic script, the Hebrew script, any of these uh, cultures that have come down to us to the modern era, they were, you know, bombing or destroying that heritage. And that's, it's an unfathomable tragedy. Um, and Yeah, that's kind of what I want to finish on today. It's a shorter video than the ones I've posted before. Maybe that'll get more views. But I I really hope this is one of my great dreams, because those of you who know me know that I am first and foremost a traveler. I've been to about 50 countries now, and I don't have any plans of stopping travel after this. After the COVID-19 situation is under control, I fully intend to continue traveling around the world. And one of my great dreams, one of my great travel hopes, is that someday Iraq will be safe to visit and I'll be able to see where our civilization began. I really believe that Iraq has the potential to be like Egypt in terms of its appeal to travelers. So fingers crossed that one day soon we'll be able to travel again, and that one day soon we'll be able to travel to Iraq. So, all right, I think that's going to be it. Shorter video today, but that's okay. So, thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.